going to talk you through this investigation that we're going to plan. So we're going to be doing a shadow stick investigation, and there's a little bit of a clue on this page as to what that's going to look like. Okay, so you need your investigate sheet in front of you. Which looks like this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to think about this section here. What are you going to investigate? So let's have a look at what we can write in there. We are going to investigate what happens to the length and direction of shadows during the day. So if you pause this video and just copy that down. Okay, so you should have written down what we're going to investigate. I want you to think about what you predict will happen and why. And you need to fill in this section here. Here's a little bit of a clue as to what it's going to look like. So you're going to have a stick on a piece of paper outside, and you're going to look at the shadow that that stick makes throughout the day. So you're thinking about what happens to the length and direction of shadows during the day. What do you predict will happen on this piece of paper here? You need to write that in that space. And it says down the bottom there, give scientific explanations for your prediction. So just have a think and make some predictions as to what will happen to the length and the directions of the shadow during the day. Now the next section that we're going to look at is we're actually going to go down here to the bottom and look at how we're going to set up the investigation. All right, so go down to this section here. What you're going to do is you're going to place a piece of paper on the ground in a place that is going to get the sun all day. So I hope you've been thinking about where that might be in your backyard, and you're going to need a large piece of paper as well. You're going to have to place the stick in the middle of the paper with some Play-Doh or something to keep it standing up straight. And every hour you're going to measure the length of the shadow and trace over the shadow with texter. So if you pause the video now and copy that down. Okay, the next section that we're going to look at is what equipment you will need, and you can probably work this out from what we've talked about in the setting up part of this. So you're going to need a large piece of paper, so you might need to paste a few pieces together or use some sticky tape. You might even have a large box that you can find that you can flatten out and put on the ground. You're going to need a stick. A pop stick will do, or just a bit of broken stick off a tree, not too long, about 20 centimetres. Some Play-Doh or some clay or something that you can put that stick in so it stays in that position for the whole day. A texter, measuring tape or ruler, and a timer, so you might just use your clock. All right? Now, as we've talked about at school before when we've been doing investigations, we have to make this a fair test. So we're going to think about this section here. The change. Remember, the change means that we can only change one thing, because otherwise we're testing more than one thing and we won't know what's caused what. So the only thing that we're going to change is the time of the day that we go out to take an observation and see what's happening. So can you please pause the video and write the time of day in the change column. Okay, the next thing that we're going to think about is what are we going to measure and observe? So, we're going to measure the length of the shadow, and we're going to measure that every hour. We're going to observe the direction of the shadow. We're going to trace over it. So can you please pause the video and write that down? We need to remind ourselves about what we're going to keep the same. So that's this section here, okay? Because we're only changing the time of the day that we go and have a look. Everything else has to be kept the same. So in that section, you need to write the stick. We're not going to halfway through our day change the stick to a ruler. We have to keep the same stick. We have to keep the position or the angle of the paper the same. So you might need to make sure that you anchor the paper on each side so that it stays still. And we're also going to keep the place where the paper is the same. So if it's in the middle of the back lawn, that's where it needs to stay the whole day. All right, over the next week, you need to think about all these things and make sure you have got all these things ready to set this investigation up next week in a sunny place in your backyard somewhere. And next week, I'll explain to you in a little bit more detail what to do. Okay, make sure you've stuck that in your science book, and I'll see you next week. Bye.